Welcome back, everybody, to the first official episode of the Renaissance Retro Podcast. My name is Robert, and I'm joined again by my co-host, Karol.
Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to present today's episode because we'll be shortly joined by indie homebrew developer César Arminio, the creator of Glory Hunters.
For those of you who haven't heard of Glory Hunters, it's a Game Boy action-adventure game which is now fully funded on Kickstarter. So we'll be talking to César about his development journey, his experience with Kickstarter, and why he chose GB Studio.
Hi César, great to have you on. Before we talk about your game, could you please introduce yourself for the listeners who may not know you? I know you have a background in graphic design. Would you like to start there?
Well, my full name is César Arminio López Velarde. People can call me Cesar. I am a I've been in the graphic design world since, that's what I studied at my university. I opened a studio a little bit more than 11 years ago with my now wife. We did from logos to merchandising, typography, everything around graphic design. But we focus mainly on editorial design. Like we used to make the design around books, some illustration within them for little children. So my wife got another job around maybe 3 years ago, something like that. And I was stuck with the studio all by myself. And I always loved to make, the idea of creating games, video games, all of that, that's my passion. I own a lot of handhelds. I don't know, PlayStation, Nintendo Switch. I've played video games since I was 3 years old. And I always loved the idea of being a part of them, maybe as an illustrator or, right now as a developer.
Mm-hmm.
So I started creating, I just made one game. It was around 6 years ago. I teamed up with a studio called Bromeo here in Mexico, and we created a video game called Pato Box, which Pato is duck, so it's a boxing duck character.
Nice.
And I brought all the design-related stuff to the studio, such as the character design, the world around them. I was the art director, the writer, and I also wanted to be a lead game designer, like to get more into it and not just the part of the graphics. And they agreed to that. So that was pretty fun because I was in touch with many 3D artists, 2D artists, a lot of programmers, but I wasn't making any coding at the time. Like I was just checking how the game would feel and how the characters would look and all of that. But I really don't have any programming skills whatsoever. But that changed when I discovered GB Studio.
That's very similar to me, actually. I did an art degree. Obviously, it was game development, but I was focusing on art. And I also didn't really code until I, came into GB Studio as well. I feel like I've learned quite a lot, actually.
Yeah, because, the way I see it, like 90% of the coding is with the logic behind it, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you know how you want something to work, the language, it's there and it's invisible for GB Studio users, at least for a while, but you can really tweak some things and test it out. I think like as a prototype tool, it's great because everything is quickly and you can play it right on the go. Like this is going the direction I want it to go, or I need to tweak it a little more in this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And other tool I used before GB Studio that is, it resembles a little bit with it. It's Construct. I don't know if you're...
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I haven't used it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something similar in the way that you drag and drop stuff, and you can create a game without watching any code behind it. But GB Studio is great, and related to the handheld system and to see your games working on that piece of hardware from more than 30 years ago, that blew my mind, and that's how I fell in love with it.
Yeah, I think that's how I did as well. Like I started using GB Studio because it was interesting. And then once I got it onto a Game Boy, I was like, oh my God, this is something else, isn't it?
Yeah, Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it is. It's surreal. Like I love the part when I got to play my last video game, like on PC, other consoles. But to be able to do it by yourself and grab it and put it in your own Game Boy, that was something else.
So how did you progress sort of from your first game to then the decision to actually make a GB Studio game? Sort of what was your motivation for switching to GB Studio and wanting to make games for Game Boy?
Well, the experience I had creating Box was amazing, but you really need a lot of people to be able to create something. A few years passed since we created that game, and I had a son, so a lot of time was consumed by him. I had to stay home to be with him, to raise him, while my wife had to work. I was receiving some money from the from that game, so that gave us the opportunity for me to really be with the kids. But there's a point where the money starts to go down. So I knew I had to create a new game, but I really wanted to do it by my own. So as I told you before, I started using Construct because programming was a wall for me. I didn't know any language. I maybe had learned some of the logic behind it, but that was not my strength. So I started prototyping in Construct. I decided to make pixel art because of how fast you can create graphics around it.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to took every tool that allowed me to do a game by myself. And it was around that time in, I think, February last year, I found out a video about a game called The Deus that I consider to be one of the most important or famous ones around the GB Studio. And I saw that it was possible for one person, and that there was interest in that kind of all, well, new retro games, specifically with the Game Boy. Like many people were following him, and he did a physical cartridge, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And that made me look into GB Studio. Then I discovered, I think, Retro Breaknik, which covered a lot of homebrews, and they were even made with GB Studio. And then I learned about the guru of GB Studio, which is Robert here. And I started watching all his tutorials and learning a lot of stuff. And yeah, like that was like the road that turned into, okay, I'm going to make a pixel art game, but it ended in Game Boy, something like that.
So how do you keep yourself motivated? So you've mentioned that you're working on your own as a one-man team. How do you keep sort of your inspiration going and your motivation?
Well, I think that, and I could be wrong, but this is my point of view. I think that when it comes to your game that you're creating, you have to be your biggest fan. Like if you don't trust in the project, you don't like the character, you don't like the story, just drop it and move to the other one. No, when I played the first prototypes, I realized that that was a game that really excited me to play. Like, and I think a lot of indie developers think it in that way. Like, what I can create that resembles or it becomes something that I wanted to play when I was little, or that I wanted to play right now. So I think that's one of the most important things, that you have to be your number one fan. Number two, be free about it. Like, it's your game. You can make the decisions you like. Obviously, you have to consider that other people will play it, but try to do your own thing. And if you're having fun with it, I don't know if yeah, like if you're having fun with it, maybe someone else will have it.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way of keeping motivated. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and also you have to realize when it comes a project like this, like the one I'm creating right now, you have to get a scope of how big or how small you're going to do it, and if you're willing to continue on that path, because you can either prototype a game a small game and you can finish it in a week, in 3 months, in whatever. But if you want to create something bigger, you have to realize that it is going to consume a lot of your time, and you gotta be ready to make that that sacrifice or to spend the time doing it.
100%, yeah. I think that cleanly brings us to Glory Hunters. I think it's a very impressive game. It seems like you're gonna take this as big as it seems to. As people want to take it, right? It's now fully funded, which is amazing. It's got 13 days to go.
Thank you.
Yeah. How does that feel? Like knowing that people, like you said, people do enjoy what you aim to make.
I think it's one of the main reasons to be inside the game development. Like for me, is the biggest satisfaction is to see the eyes of someone grabbing your game and having fun or being entertained by it. Before the Kickstarter, I wanted to test this out, right? I started doing the game and realized that there was a competition going on the GB Compo, but I found that about that around, I think it was August. So I read the rules and I thought, well, I started creating this in June. I'm using some of the assets that I created, like only like 5 of them. So I consider for me to be within the rules. I saw it as a perfect opportunity to see how people would react to it. Like not only judges or players, but also to help it give a little bit more of exposition by relating it to the compo. When I saw so many comments and people like adding, following on my each page, even people willing to pay to donate on the project, that made me realize that maybe we could take it to the next step, right? So and also the competition worked for me great, because that's why Bitmapsoft, the publisher that is going to take care of the physical medium, contacted me and asked me if I had any plans to publish it physically. I talked with them about the Kickstarter I have in mind, and they hopped in right away. They thought it was a great idea, to build up that exposition of the game and not just to bring it out, but to really create a community around it. That's like the path I took to where we are now, and it's been amazing to see that so many people not only wants to keep collecting Game Boy games, but that some of them are really interested and hyped for what they can find within the game, and that's amazing, man. And I thank you all of them.
Yeah, that is. It's nice to see that you're so joyful about everybody enjoying what you've made. It's nice.
Well, you're going to find everything, like I found people that didn't understand the concept, like, well, I'm cutting bushes like 10, 20 times, and that's fine. Like, you cannot get everyone happy, but I think that some of the people that really got the idea behind the mechanics, and by the way, it's a mechanic that still needs a lot of polish. Like, we need to balance the numbers. I need to create more achievements, making them more fun. But the simple mechanic behind that, when people gets it, I think that's what locks them into the game,
So what were sort of your sources of inspiration for Glory Hunters? How did you come up with the idea, or when did you start thinking about, okay, this is a game that I want to make about, collecting achievements and getting the glory points?
I had this idea where you have a game resembling Dragon Quest, like the old Dragon Quests. I wanted to make it like an RPG in which you could move from zone to zone, but by paying the gold you earned, by defeating enemies or making certain jobs. All the idea was around, well, maybe just making some grinding, but also playing mini games, interacting with people. I thought it was possible, like doing it with with GB Studio, because I think what the base materials that it gives to you, it's totally doable. But then I find out in a video in which Robert showed that you could actually make the damn NPC attack others. I thought, man, this is great. This is like all the interaction I need to make this work, like to have a Zelda gameplay, but with this mechanic around it. Inspiration around it is obviously The Legend of Zelda, mainly the first one for the NES, Link to the Past for the Super Nintendo or the SNES. I love that game. I play it almost once a year. A Link to the Past. One of the problems it had for me is that I memorized it. Like, I love it, but I know what to do every single time, and I thought it would be cool to have something like this game, but where you could discover something else in your next playthrough. Some of those ideas, like, were merging. I also played a lot of World of Warcraft for PC. I thought, well, that's when I learned about achievement system, not on the Xbox or anything else, but in that particular game. I was an achievement addict. Like, I wanted to get more achievements and to really show them off. So it was like little pieces came together to create this. And once I prototyped it with even, I think it was 4 screens. I think that I had something in there. Like, I had to balance it, I had to polish it a lot, but it worked. Like, instead of having experience points like any other RPG, maybe you could have achievement points which you could use to expand your world and expand your character. And I think it's doing pretty good. I still have a lot of work behind it, but yeah, mainly those: World of Warcraft, obviously Zelda, a lot of Dragon Quest, like all these old school RPGs. Mainly
Yeah.
those. Yeah.
I think I feel that in that it's I love the medieval theme. I think that normally fantasy is what people go for, but I think medieval has its place as well.
Well, in the medieval theme, I went back to see which elements were created, like what was inspiration behind Zelda, and a lot of that came from the Celtic culture, or well, and medieval elements around it. So I started gathering them. That's why you're going to see a lot of symbology around the Celtic culture. But as I told you before, it was my game, and I still wanted to see maybe a small crusade, like a just mini game in there. So I started mixing a lot of that. I also included some parts that were influenced by my culture. So you can say it's a mix of a lot of stuff to create something that I want to play. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. I know that I think, you got to a stretch goal, didn't you? And is it a 6th chapter that's maybe going to make it into the game?
Yeah. I divided, well, when I was creating the Kickstarter, I saw others, like the ones created by Dana Punch, the Green Boy Games one. I think the name of other one is Hop, or About a Bunny.
Planet Hop.
Planet Hop, yeah. Hop. I watched a lot of them, but I realized that the help I wanted to receive was to expand the game. Not only give, I don't know, keychains or maybe a t-shirt. Like, if you were going to support the game, let's focus in it making better and bigger. So I divided the rewards only to be in additional chapters. Well, one of them is to create it in color, like in a DX mode, like Zelda Link's Awakening DX. And the last one to pay for a port for the Nintendo Switch, to be ported to the Nintendo Switch. Yeah, the first one, well, I had the idea of how many base chapters I would like to include, and the other ideas that were floating around, I just dropped them in. And this one is called, well, the theme around it is a desert, people around the desert, their culture. I thought about some achievements that could include reading some stones, defeat new enemies around it. And yeah, we're nearly the second one. I think I don't know how much to from Mexican pesos, my currency, to other currencies is right now, but we're pretty close to hitting the second threshold.
So we've been talking about the Kickstarter. So how long has it taken you to put it all together? Because the page looks amazing with so much information.
Thank you.
If other people wanted to sort of not recreate but follow the path that you've chosen, could you maybe explore a bit more?
Yeah, for sure. It took around, and I'm not saying like I worked in it every single hour of the day, but it took me around 3 months to have that Kickstarter page. Creating, recording the gameplay and make the gameplay as GIFs, polishing the information within it, making some art around the Kickstarter. It took me about 3 months. I can't remember how much I spent every day. It may be like 4 hours, something like that, 4 to 5 hours. I constantly change it. I came back to it. I shared it with my friends. They gave me feedback. We fixed some of the grammar. There's some mistakes in there, but I cannot change them right now because it has already launched, but we tried to polish it as good as we can. So yeah, many of my friends helped me in that area. Also, the guys behind bitmapsoft were alongside me in this process. So they also checked it. They gave me feedback as well. But yeah, it took around 3 months, something like that, to create the Kickstarter page.
Yeah, I think you did a great job. I think that might be part of the reason why it got fully funded so fast, is because it's just so professional and like you know what to expect, right?
Thank you.
Is the release date like next March? The estimated delivery, I guess.
Yeah. I'm going to be honest with you. I need to finish the game around October of this year, so that we can play test it, get rid of the bugs. I also have to end the game as soon as possible, because there's a time gap where you send the game to the publisher and they kind of test them with the saving states and all of that, like all the technical factors around it. We discussed that it would be a good date to be released around March, because that gave us that time lapse that we need for all of that. But yeah, if everything goes as planned, you're going to be receiving your standard or collector's edition within that month, directly from bitmapsoft.
Amazing. Yeah. So what was it like working with bitmapsoft? Was the idea that did you say that the bitmapsoft is from England? Like, is it for the idea that you're in Mexico, they're in England, America's in the middle, you can kind of ship anywhere?
I think they ship. Yeah. Well, when I was in the in the GB competition, I saw them as the sponsors, as one of the sponsors. I saw another publisher that's called Incubate Games, and obviously the Green Boy Games. So, I think it's Mad Cat or something like that. There were a lot of them, and what catched my eye with bitmapsoft is that they were sending their games worldwide. Those 3 months of planning the Kickstarter was also just having talks with them or chats with them, like calculating the prices. How would we deal with the shipping to all of the countries? The prices around it, the weight of the collector's edition, all of that stuff. But yeah, they have been great. They have been always supportive, and the best thing about maybe having a publisher is that you feel like they have your back. Like if you need to for example, I had some trouble making the graphics for the trailer, and Darren, one of bitmapsoft, he's really great in the visuals of making 3D models and rendering around that. So he helped me out with some of the effects. Yeah, we've been working together with many different stuff, like from the trailer to planning and scaling the prices. And I'm sure we continue working in everything else that comes from now on.
So you reckon you've made a solid partnership now, and maybe if you make another game in the future, you'll work with them again?
Well, hopefully, yeah. I got a lot of these questions, like your next game. Like, I really want to focus on this one.
Yeah, of course.
This one kind of terrifies me a bit. Like sometimes I see the Kickstarter and I watch like there's over 700 people expecting a playable, if not a great game or a fun game. But yeah, my first focus is to finish this game, to test it out, polish it as far as I can do it, giving it my best to it. But yeah, I have thought of making some more games in Game Boy, and hopefully we could still work together. Yeah, they're great. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so obviously we're talking about more chapters, and obviously the deadline of October, it seems like. Has GB Studio held you back in any way? Like the limitations and maybe unforeseen bugs?
Yeah, sometimes. Well, one of the bugs that really bugged me for a long time, it was the fact that GB Studio was not saving like the actor when you copy pasted some of what you wanted to do with that actor.
Yes.
The GB Studio didn't recognize it as the actor. Something like that.
Yeah, it's the reference, right? You have to. It's like the self isn't referencing self; it's referencing the player, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that made my player do many stuff like go invincible, or one of the main problems with that is that I was testing the enemy AI in the way that you could push them when you hit them, but that self didn't help, and I was stuck in that problem like maybe a week in the same problem until I decided to start making something else and then go back to it. And I realized after that when I changed from self to directly the actor, that the bug was all right. That's the only bug that really had me lose a lot of time. But right now, when you talk about the limitations around GB Studio, I really learned to embrace them, because it's great to have something that
yeah, I know, yeah,
you know what I'm talking about. Like,
yeah,
you want to make a huge world and with all of these mechanics, but when there's something that limits you on the software level and even the hardware level, like you can have certain amount of actors in the scene, or you cannot do this because these actors will disappear. I think that really helps you keep moving forward on the project.
Yeah, I completely agree, because you could easily scale up when really you should just be moving towards the end, right?
Exactly, focusing on the important things, and leaving the others to other developers that are working for PC and other systems. Yeah.
So maybe if you look back at the whole process of sort of developing the game and then also marketing it for Kickstarter and bitmapsoft, how would you sort of evaluate the whole process? What are sort of the lessons that you could maybe drew for other people, what to do, maybe what not to do? Was there something that really surprised you that you didn't really know about?
Well, one thing I would say is that marketing is, I wouldn't know which percentage of the full game is, but it's a huge one. Like, you have to focus on marketing to really give your game exposition. What I always say to my friends and to other people is that you can create amazing things, but if people don't know that they're there, they don't really exist in the world. For an indie developer or a homebrew developer or whatever you want to see it, it's really frustrating to not have the money to really pay for a professional marketing. But you can always go with the social media, creating GIFs of your game. GIFs are great. For example, if you were going to market a game within GB Studio or anywhere else, try to not go with the still images. Always, even if you're going to work a little bit harder, go for the GIFs. GIFs attracts a lot of attention. It makes the people realize what the intended mechanics of your game are, what they can do within it. And yeah, I'm focused on social media, but that's like having another job, because I really like making games. So going back to Twitter and Facebook and even Instagram, I didn't have Instagram. And the guys at bitmapsoft told me, like, man, you gotta open Instagram because it's a necessary evil. Like, we need to drop some bombs in there as well. But it definitely takes a lot of time. It's really tedious if you don't know. I think I'm doing wrong stuff in Twitter in a way that I cannot exploit it at its fullest, but it definitely pays out. Like, people start sharing your content, sharing your GIFs, even your links, like to the Kickstarter, to the itch.io page. What I saw that, in my case, what I saw that people caught attention to the itch.io page, for example, for the demo, was Facebook. I don't know if because they were surfing the web in their computers and it was easier to go to itch.io in their PCs, or I don't know. But when pulling people to play the demo, I saw that Facebook was like top one social media to go to.
That's really useful information, because I don't use Facebook at all.
Yeah, no, I talk with many developers, and they really don't trust Facebook, or they think that it's a dead it's dead social media. But in the analytics from itch.io and even from the Kickstarter, Facebook was the cheapest, like, to pay for ads, and where I got more interactions in a way that they would drop to the webpage, like actually go to the webpage. Twitter is like, they like it, they share it, but I could have like 50 likes and only 2 people came to Kickstarter, you know?
Mm.
And maybe it's just me. I know that like I've said before, I think I'm not using correctly Twitter, but yeah, that's been my experience with it. Facebook rules.
Yeah, maybe it's the fact that a lot of people, use Twitter on their phone, and it's so easy to press just the like button or just to easily retweet. Whereas I guess if you scroll on Facebook, maybe you are on the PC and it's just easy to, click the link and see the whole page rather than wait on your phone until it loads and it's maybe on a small screen. It's definitely interesting insights into how to market and how to become a marketeer out of nowhere, and educate yourself on it.
Yeah, no, and I'm sure that different results will of course be for different projects or people or whatever, or studios. But yeah, that's been my experience.
Should we start wrapping up? Should we?
Yeah, my favorite question I always ask the people is, if you were stranded on a remote island and you had a Game Boy that had unlimited battery, what would be the 3 games that you want to have with you and you would just play for the rest of your life?
3 games.
3 games.
Super Mario Land 3, Wario's Land. I always come back to that game and it never bores me. Second one would be maybe a Pokemon Gold or Silver, or even Crystal. And maybe I can spend a lot of days trying to catch shiny Pokemon and all of that. And the third one, just for the love of it, Link's Awakening. Yeah, those 3. Pokemon Crystal, Link's Awakening, and Wario Land. Well, Super Mario Land 3, Wario Land. Yeah.
3 classics.
Yeah.
No Tetris?
I really don't enjoy. I think it's great. Like, I think those games are great, but they're just not for me. Like I like platformers, RPGs. I don't know. When it's focused on in puzzle, I tend to get bored quickly.
That's fair enough. I think for me, the numbers or the high score in puzzle games, like I feel like that is what hooks me, just like the achievements did for you, right?
Yeah.
Well, is there anything that you would sort of like to add or like to touch on?
I thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk about GB Studio, the Kickstarter, and everything else. Thank you very much.
No problem.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Speak in the future.
Yeah, let's speak in the future.
Before we wrap up, I'll put my Patrons up on screen right now. Thank you so much to you guys. Remember to like the video if you like the video, subscribe if you haven't already. And thank you again to César Arminio, the developer behind the fully funded Kickstarter game Glory Hunters.
We both recommend you go and play the first chapter on Cesar's itch page, and there's going to be a link in the description.
There's also a link for the Kickstarter project if you want to donate and help Cesar reach the second stretch goal. Otherwise, that's all from us today.
Thank you for tuning in.